it's Roslyn, and I can't wait to get into this episode of Toni, Maya, Lynn, and Joan, Life and Love According to Girlfriends. So first up, we have a brand new segment called Situation Salon, and it's all about Black women and hair. And you remember Situation Salon, right? Like, that was Maya's cousin Ronnie's salon where she was always skipping out on work to get her hair done. But in this segment, I talk with celebrity hairstylist Rayo Cole about what to do when white people start acting all mystified about your black hair. And next, I talk with public theologian Ekemini from the Truth Table podcast, and she shares some wisdom on Black millennials and faith, and on what to do when you feel like God has let you down.
Maya Denise Wilkes, what kind of situation did you bring up in situations?
I am here today with Rayo Cole, who is the founder of Rayo Cole Hair, a celebrity brand that works with people such as Kim Kardashian, Lupita Nyong'o, our favorite, Serena Williams. She's also a lifestyle coach, helping people with love, self-esteem, and going for your dreams. In addition to being a philanthropist with her organization, My Song, which works in conjunction with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. She's also a singer-songwriter and recording artist and has been a featured TEDx speaker. So basically, she's the perfect person to help us dig a little bit deeper into Black women and our hair stories. Thank you so much for joining us, Rayo.
Thank you, Roslyn. That was such a great intro. It's so nice to meet you. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm super excited too, because we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is hair.
Yes.
Yeah. So to get a little bit deeper into girlfriends and what happened in the episode, we see our girl Toni dating a white guy who essentially puts her on blast about her weave.
Now, if I may, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge this beautiful woman by my side. We've only been dating a short time, but already she's had quite an impact on me and how I view the city that I love, Los Angeles.
Tim Morton for mayor.
She's the embodiment of what this city is all about, diversity. She's dating a white man, me, and I've just recently discovered that her hair is a weave. Her own African-American hair is enhanced with strands of Korean hair. Her hair is a metaphor for what this city can become. Opposing cultures, supporting each other, weaving together to create something beautiful.
Right?
Right. I remember that. I was cringing. I was so upset.
It was the worst. It was like every Black woman's nightmare.
Right?
Right. So I just want to get right into it. Can you break down for us, let us know, what are the rules of engagement for explaining your hair to white people? Or to, if you're dating a white lover, or let's not even say just white people, but anyone who isn't Black. Like, how do you even approach that situation?
Wow, that's such a great question. And I have a few different answers. So I think every woman is different, and how she goes about it's going to be up to her. I have clients that will never tell anyone that they have hair extensions or if they're wearing wigs.
Really?
Some of these people, they have hair loss. They don't want the world to know. They've been wearing units and pieces for a long time, and they just rather not say. And I do think that because, yes, Black women, we love to change our hair. We love to do different things, from protective styles to wigs to natural to our styled, relaxed, pressed. There's so many things that we do with our hair. I feel like in our culture, it's something that we just kind of know. But then the rest of the world just always assumes that we have something in our head, and they're so comfortable asking us, but they won't ask other women that of other races.
Oh, my gosh.
Do you have extensions? Are you? And I have so many clients of so many different backgrounds, and they all wear extensions and pieces. But I do feel like for Black women, it is something that comes up a lot. Mm-hmm. All right. So back to my original statement.
Yeah.
Some women don't want to say anything, and they don't have to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's other women that are comfortable with that, and they'll just change their hair as they change their underwear. It's just something that they're comfortable doing. And so you'll just kind of have to understand.
Sure. It's so crazy, Rayo, that you brought that up, that like Black women are often asked about their hair. The other day, so I have braids, box braids, and they're really long and they're beautiful. And I was in a hurry. I'm walking through the parking lot. And there's a woman who's probably 3 feet behind me, not social distancing, and I'm trying to just get to my car. She stops me and insists on having a conversation about my hair. Like, I never even stopped. I kept walking, and she kept behind me and kept asking me, how long did it take to get done? How much did it cost? All of these questions.
Comfortable.
Too comfortable. And so it really made me start thinking about, how do you even navigate that space when someone comes up to you and insists on talking about it?
Well, I had a similar situation. I wear a waist length custom unit that I made.
Yes, ma'am.
I use and it's Rayo Cole hair branded, and I'm really excited. I love it so much. And it's like a kinky straight texture, because I believe that the beauty of our hair is that cottony feel that you get when you press it. So I love mimicking that with my units. And of course, I make units for all different hairstyles, colors, ethnicities, blah, blah, blah. But I had a woman ask me after a show, is that all your hair? And I said, yes. Is it all your hair? And she said, yes. Because we don't have to people please. I mean, it really just depends on each person. I have a girlfriend as well who was sharing in a room full of people, white people, that she was uncomfortable with how much they kept coming up to her, asking her if her hair is real. And she said, I don't ask you if your teeth are real, or if that's your natural skin tone, or if those are your real lips. I don't do that.
Right.
And so it is uncomfortable.
Right. I love that you brought up people pleasing, because I think a lot of times, just to appease the people who have expressed some curiosity, it almost feels like you need to give them an answer, but they're the ones that are being offensive and being rude.
Absolutely. We don't have to answer. It's none of their business.
Right. So from the perspective of someone, who coaches a lot of people, how would you handle this, like back to Toni, in the context of a relationship? Because she's got this new guy in her life and she likes him and she wants to be open and she wants to share. But like you said, not everybody wants to share. So if there's someone that you're dating, when does that conversation even come about? And how do you even do that? How do you say, this is my hair routine? When I said I was washing my hair this Saturday, it wasn't a joke to get out of a date. Like, I'm serious. I was really washing my hair.
Right. And that's a great question. Again, I think it just comes back to each person. Some women are much more quiet about their beauty secrets. Other women are more open. And I think it just really depends on when the guy is in love with you and like you're comfortable to be honest at the time when you're comfortable. And if you're never comfortable, that's okay too. Again, I have a lot of clients with hair loss. And so these units that they wear, they're able to do all kinds of things with it and go swimming, and nobody can tell. So they don't want to let people know because they're really ashamed. Whereas I had another client who removed her wig on the first date and told the guy, this is my natural hair. And he freaked out.
Whoa, really?
Well, she was told she had alopecia, sweetheart, and God bless her soul. But she kind of would jump really quick and get too comfortable before the time is right, in my opinion. So again, it depends on each person. Right. Everybody's timeline is different.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting parallel with that client, because I think we tend to do that in relationships when we really want it to work out, so you kind of go in and you're like, here's my full self right away off the bat. Take me as I am, which maybe the right person will meet you there, but you could potentially maybe scare some people off, not necessarily about hair, but just in general.
And I believe that when a man sees a beautiful woman, he sees her beauty, but what keeps him is her energy. So the truth is, we're all going to change with time. Everyone gets old. Yes. Hair thins out. That's just the reality. So eventually someone will fall in love with your soul and your spirit, which is the most important thing. Yeah, everybody is different. And I'll tell you guys a secret that I wear units and I have protective styles. I've been with my fiance 3 years. Even though he's seen photos of my natural hair, he's never seen it in the flesh, and he's okay. We're still getting married.
What? Oh my God. Ryo, how did you even get away with that?
Not even to get away. It's just, I do what I do.
Okay.
And I just keep it. It's something that I like to do. I'm the type of woman who loves to be glammed and happy and comfortable. And yeah, I just feel like it's not something that I have to showcase, and we're not married yet. So when I'm actually married to him, then you'll get to touch it in the flesh. That's a gift. That's a wedding gift.
Baby steps. That is the definition of baby steps.
Right.
No, I think that's cool. And what I'm hearing from you repeatedly is that it's all about your own comfort with yourself. So speak to any women who are listening. Black women, we tend to have a really complicated relationship with our hair because from an early age, we're taught that our natural hair that grows out of our scalp isn't beautiful. So speak to any women who may be listening, about how to kind of find that center. How do you find that self-love for your hair when, you're going through, it's not doing what you wanted to do. You tried all the products and you're just frustrated and you're not feeling that self-love. What do you say to her?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. To all my sisters out there, we are, just because God made you the way you are, you're perfect just the way you are because you exist. That's the first thing. And of course, there's so much things that we've been told as children that we're not beautiful, our skin tone, blah, blah, blah. I always love that quote that we have the only hair that defies gravity. And that's beautiful. Right?
It is.
And it's okay to change your hair. It's okay to do things, but it's okay to do that as long as you don't allow it to consume you, and however direction you go with your hair. As long as you know that the person inside and whoever is with you, whoever you're dating, you know your deservability, what your worth is. It has nothing to do with just how you look. Of course, you want to put yourself together nicely and do the best with what you got, as always. But if someone is going to tell you, oh, I only date girls that have hair like this or this skin color, then those guys you don't want anyways. So whoever you're going to be with should love you for who you are, but it does start with yourself. And I know that's cliche, but it's true. Just really embracing every aspect of yourself, every layer of yourself, every curl, and being the best that you can be in your life, following your dreams, doing things that make you happy, and being fulfilled first.
Yeah. Can you give us a few hair tips to live by in this period of quarantine that we're all going through? Because at least for me, I know I have survived. I feel like I'm coming through on the other side and my hair is okay, but things start to slip when you've been inside the house for 45 days. So hit us with some tips.
Well, I always tell my clients it's important to be self-sufficient. I have some clients now that can't even curl their own hair. They can't do anything.
Oh my
God,
Ryo, that's me.
Is that you? Okay.
It's me. I can do a 2-strand twist. That's what I have now.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Baby steps, like you said.
There's baby steps. Definitely taking the time to learn how to put yourself together. This is the perfect time because everything is shut down. At least here in LA, they've shut down salons again. So yes, be self-sufficient. Learn how to do things by yourself. Learn how to take care of your hair. And it's fun. I love the self-care. Self-care was what helped me build my self-esteem. I was bullied a lot as a kid. I was the only chocolate drop girl in my class, and they just came for me. And I found a textbook in the library. I would hide there just because all the kids would bully me. I found this book. It was a 17 hard copy of a textbook that they made. One was from 1950. The other one was from 1970. I gravitated more to the 1950 because they had a lot of the technique that the women did back then. I love that era, the 30s, 40s, 50s. So I learned how to do my own cuticles, cut my cuticles, my own facials, how to keep my teeth white, how to do skincare, my own pedicure. So I can do it all. So I always tell people you need to learn these things. It's fun. I know some people don't have patience for it, but in times like this, when your stylist can't come to your house, You got to try something so you don't have to feel bad.
Right, right.
Practice. So self-sufficiency.
That's really powerful. And thank you for sharing, that bit of your story that once you you can more easily get in tune with yourself and get yourself to a place where you feel more comfortable with yourself by trying some new hairstyles, try to learn, how you can best take care of yourself. And then you kind of know, I feel best when I feel best when I do my toenails and when I paint them this color, or, when I have my hair straight or when it's curly. I think that's just such a powerful testimony.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Rayo. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy woman, so thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Please share where our listeners can connect with you on social media.
Thank you. So all my handles are at Rayo Cole. So that's RAYO and Cole, like Natalie King Cole. And you can find our celebrity hairline at RayoColeHair.com. And for our music platform, it's my-song.org. And RayoCole.com will be actually active in the next week. So yeah, that's where you can find us. We're everywhere. We're accessible. My TED Talk is out as well. I've had a lot of wonderful people reach out, and a lot of women of color. I was the first woman of color to talk about eating disorders and how that is, and how my life changed, and I got closer to God and more spiritual. And I'm definitely available to support anyone who's needing support in those areas. And thank you guys. I'm really grateful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Thank you. Chatting with Rayo was so good. She has really great positive energy, and personally, I love that she's all about self-love. Next up, I talk with public theologian Ekemini, and she helps me answer some really tough questions about what to do when you're facing hardships. She also shares her perspective on decolonizing the Christian faith. Thank you so much for joining us. Ekemini is here on the Toni, Maya, Lynn, and Joan podcast, where we'll be going a little bit deeper into love and life and talking about girlfriends. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So Ekemini is a public theologian, writer, self-proclaimed fashionista, and co-host of the Truth Table podcast. Her work offers a theological perspective on anti-racism, and she has written for The Washington Post, The Atlantic, Huffington Post, Black Voices, Christianity Today, and The Witness. So that's super impressive. We typically start our episodes off with a little segment that I call This Week in Toni, Maya, Lynn, and Joan. Just a little overview of the 3 episodes that we'll be talking about today. First, in episode 7, we see Joan actually catches Maya's husband, Darnell, getting a little too flirty and feeding strawberries to his coworker, Cecily. So Joan is trying to decide if and when she'll tell Maya when she's eventually kind of backed into a corner, and she has to tell Maya that she saw her husband in a compromising position, which is not fun. Obviously, Darnell gets upset, and Maya confronts him, and he shows up at Joan's job, and he goes all like, Maya's my woman, and I'm not cheating on her. And Maya realizes at the end of the show that she doesn't actually believe Darnell. So that's fun. Episode 8, we see that Joan has a pregnancy scare. So she gets scared that she gets pregnant by a guy that she dated, and we saw in previous episodes that they call Big Girly Hips Marcus. Yeah, and then Toni, Maya, and Lynn come through and help Joan throughout her pregnancy and throughout her pregnancy scare. She didn't actually get pregnant, but so they get her a pregnancy test like all, good girlfriends should do. And as Joan is starting to accept that she's pregnant, we're also watching Lynn, who's sorting through like her biracial identity. So that's really interesting. At the end, we find out that it's actually a false positive and Joan is not pregnant. And I think that Joan is actually a little surprised at just how disappointed she is. And finally, the last episode that we'll be talking about is episode 9, which it's Thanksgiving and Joan's planning a dinner and nobody's going to Joan's dinner, which is sad. So she goes to have dinner at Davis's restaurant, where she meets this impressive attorney, Preston Hall, who she invites back to her home for fried turkey, which she does not know how to cook. um, which gets her into a conundrum. And then her whole plan with Preston is foiled when all of her friends come back over to the house and ruin everything. So that's just a little overview of the couple episodes that we're going to be talking about today. Ekemini, I wanted to get into some questions on like your opinion on our girlfriends. So
Yeah.
one thing that I really love about Girlfriends is that, you know, even though it's a sitcom, they really bring up some kind of deep issues, I think. Obviously in light and funny ways because they have 22 minutes to do it.
Right, right.
But in these episodes, Joan has that pregnancy scare. And there's one moment where she's like doubled over on the couch and she's like asking, why me? Why is this happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you pause and really think about that moment, that's, you know, when bad things happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think you sort of as like a theologian and also someone who mentors and disciples a lot of people probably receive that question a lot. The sort of, why, Lord? Why me? Why is this happening?
Right.
What do you typically say when somebody starts to ask those questions?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right?
It is.
Because I mean, really, it's a question. What you're getting at is theodicy, you know, which is in theology, that's the study of the goodness of God in the face of evil, right? So that's the question of like, why do bad things happen to good people, or why do we suffer, or you know, all those questions that pertain to suffering with the reality that God is good and God is sovereign, and why do we suffer, right? And so it depends on what's going on, to be honest. It's not a cookie cutter answer. You know, when what I have learned is that when people are asking the question why, and it's sometimes it's oriented to God or sometimes it's not. You know, sometimes, you know, some people aren't always believers, but it's a soul cry, right? It's not something that you can really pinpoint. You know, you don't want to be like Job's friends in the book of Job that says, well, did you do this? Did you do that? Maybe you're not doing this enough. Maybe you're not praying enough. Maybe you're not fasting enough. Maybe, you know, somehow putting the blame, you know, for the suffering on this person. And the reality is that as people living in this broken and fallen world, which I think we see very clearly that this world is broken, fundamentally broken, from
Yeah.
government to our institutions not being trustworthy to, you know, corrupt police institutions. I mean, I don't think I need to lay out the case. I think people can agree with that. I think the reality is that we will suffer. And primarily it is because of sin, right? The sin that entered into this world that has actually corrupted the structures and the world that we live in. I mean, even down to climate change, where you see the earth like crying out. We've got fires, we've got hurricanes, floods, you know, snow at like crazy times of the year. I mean, it's
Right.
just everything is going haywire, if you will. And so that reality is something I think that we all grapple with. We all grapple with suffering. We all experience suffering to different degrees. Now, sometimes, and I put a very particular sometimes on this. Sometimes when we're suffering, we do it. We have to examine ourselves and do some introspection. Am I suffering as a consequence of my own decisions, my own bad choices, or are my hands clean in this situation? And like, no, I'm really suffering as a result of the wickedness that happens in this world. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so it depends on what's happening. So it depends on the circumstance, on what somebody's saying. But even then, even if somebody is suffering as a consequence of their own bad decision or their bad choice, I think even then you want to be able to still walk with that person and still tell them that there's grace available and helping them to change their perspective. Because I mean, honestly, when I was watching that episode with Joan, you know, thinking that she's pregnant or having that pregnancy scare, I'm like, man, like only in this broken world would our first instinct or reaction be to pregnancy news that it would be like bad news, right? Or like a nightmare or a scare. It's like, actually, pregnancy, a child is a blessing, right?
It's a blessing. Yes.
The baby is a blessing. And I think we saw that in the end of the episode when Joan was a little disappointed
that she wasn't pregnant. She started to come around to the idea of being a mom, even a single mom. Maybe that wasn't maybe her plan or ideal for her, but you could tell she was a little disappointed when the doctor confirmed that actually she wasn't pregnant, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think also with the Joan pregnancy situation, in previous episodes, we've seen her really desire family. And I think, it should be stated, like, the show Girlfriends is not particularly religious. They actually, there's religion and spirituality, I think, present in some episodes that we see, but they never present the characters as, like, particularly spiritual even, maybe in different ways at different times. But I think we can't really divorce the sort of spiritual and a lot of times specifically Christian aspect from the depiction of Black women, because so many of us are practicing Christianity in one way or another. And I think, once again, I think you see that through the series. But so to go back to talking about Joan, is like you see her, she's desiring family, and it's almost as if by the end of the episode she kind of accepts, like, okay,
right,
maybe this isn't 1000% the way that I wanted it to happen. But hey, this is a little piece of what I wanted.
Yes.
And then she doesn't get that. And I think that that's like the heart of the disappointment. Like she doesn't get the family, she doesn't get the husband. She doesn't get the kid. And she finds herself right back in the same position that she was at the beginning of the episode, which is nothing.
Right.
Like, and that's really tough.
Yeah, I think, so I haven't watched Girlfriends in many moons, right?
Right.
Girlfriends came out, I don't want to date myself, but it came out when I was in college, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And so so watching it back, I was like, I was kind of surprised by a lot of and this is just season 1, so I'm not into season 2 yet and further on. And I'm sure that some things morph and change and the shows evolve or regress, however you want, depending on how you view things. But she, I was surprised by the Christian elements. Like Joan was the most churchy one out of all of them. She was, she'd have those instances where she'll cut away and pray to God, right? Or she has her 3 months rule. She has, these things that I was like, oh, this is interesting. I do not remember this element, or this angle, on the show. So that was interesting, to see that. But you're right. I mean, but even with the show, it's interesting how much the desire or maybe like an over desire for marriage is on the show. And I say this as a single woman who I desire marriage as well. But Joan has a lot going for her. She's an attorney. She has a good group of friends, an eclectic group of friends.
Right.
If you add William, so there's a lot of things that she has going on. But I think sometimes when we're so fixated on the one thing we don't have, or maybe the couple things we don't have, maybe so the marriage and the kids, we can lose sight of what we do have. And I think in some ways, Joan kind of falls into that trap a bit. But anyway, I know that's not where you're quite going, but
I think that's a good observation, though. I do, because it definitely is. It's central throughout the entire show, right? That Joan is helplessly single. Yes. And even too, I think she doesn't ever really reach that point where she's just like, okay, I'm cool. It's all good. We'll wait. Right. It's always like, oh my God, I gotta find him. Right. But I do kind of want to like switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about some of the other characters, because the observation I had when I watched these 3 episodes, right, is like Maya's having serious marriage trouble. Like her friend saw her real life husband feeding a strawberry to a whole to his coworker, which is, once again, in the context of a sitcom, that's like, girl, that's so funny. But in real life, it's like, girl, we about to go fight him. Because what? Are you serious?
Right.
I know you didn't on your work schedule. This is what you're doing? Okay, sir. But then also, you have that, and then you have Joan. Okay, so we talked about her singleness, but her loneliness around the Thanksgiving thing, right?
Yeah.
And then there's Lynn, who's kind of trying to figure out, her identity, her biracial identity, which, you know,
Yes.
I am not biracial, so I can't even
I'm not
really,
either. Mm-hmm.
I can't speak to that. I can only, you know, speak to what I've seen and what I've learned from other people.
Sure.
But I guess it seems like, you know, a lot of these issues are really tough, like life-changing things to deal with, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I ask myself as a Black millennial, when I'm kind of dealing with a lot of things,
Yep,
I lean on my faith, even if it's just sometimes like a simple, like, God, please. Like, I don't have the words. I don't have a fancy scripture right now. I don't know what's going on. Just, you know, I'm leaning on that. And I think for a lot of people in our generation that came before us too, we're very faith-centered. Yes. But now we're seeing kind of a migration of Black millennials away from the church. And especially, I think, just in light of 2020, it is highlighted. Like, we're seeing this. And I'm wondering, like, when Black millennials are dealing with these same sorts of things, problems with marriage, problems with loneliness, problems with identity.
You're right.
We're not going to the church, but why?
Goodness. Yeah. Good question. I don't, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think in some ways well, I think there's a sense in which this generation of, let's see, millennials, boomers, and then X. I think the how can I say, the slide, you know, if you will, or the decline in church attendance started, I would say, even with Gen X. You know, I think, you know, and then of course, you know, because you know they're kind of like millennials, and depending on when you're born, you have exennials, you know, that are on the cusp, you know, of like being X, and then the older millennials. So it's kind of hard to divide them, but I think there's some sort of, but I don't want to ignore them either, right? Because they get mad when they get ignored, because a lot of people skip from boomers to millennials, which I understand. I'm a millennial too, so I, you know, But I think in some ways, there have been some real misses on the part of the church with regard to addressing the felt needs of the congregants. There's been some, and just hypocrisy that they've seen, right? So when we do not live a life worthy of the calling that we have received as God's children, as co-heirs with Christ, as those who are counted among the royal priesthood, when our lives do not reflect our profession of faith, people see that. People know that. That's whether they are believers or not. Like, oftentimes, this is back before I got saved, but but I remember like being, you know, out, you know, in the world cutting up, you know, BC, before Christ. And
won't you do it though?
And I remember unsaved people not being unbelievers saying, "Hey, wait a minute, aren't you a Christian? Are you supposed to be doing X, Y, Z? Wait, aren't you, aren't you supposed to be doing this and not that?" Like even they know. Right?
even they know that the standard that you're supposed to be living up to is you're not quite reaching it.
They know, you know, they know. And so, and the scriptures talk about that in, you know, in Romans, and that even for those who are not believers, that the law is written on their hearts. They know right from wrong. Now they're choosing not to live according to God. And we pray that the Spirit would work on them so that they do live in obedience, you know, to God, as we're praying that the Lord would help us to continue to live in obedience. But I think sometimes it's a hypocrisy, which I always tell people, well, there's room for another hypocrite, because none of us are completely consistent, right?
No,
because we're human beings. We are not completely consistent. Right? You know, you can call out capitalism 1 minute, and then you over here, who created your iPhone? Where did they get the materials to get that? I'm just, you know, so there's contradictions, and it's hard to live a very consistent life. But when something is so blatantly hypocritical, people see that, and they notice that. Or when the church doesn't speak out on the things that concern them. So think about police brutality, right? What's
Right.
going on with Black Lives Matter and has been going on, right?
Yes.
For decades in this country. This
Hmm.
is not, sadly, this is not something new,
It's
right?
not new, and that's the
Um,
sad part for
that's
sure.
the part. It's not new, but when you don't hear the pastor, him or her preaching from the pulpit about these things that you care about, you begin to be like, man, does God even care? Right?
Right.
Does
Or
God
I
care?
think a lot of times too the question becomes for and I'm saying this for
Yeah,
from my own personal
yeah.
experience. It was never does God care? It was
Mm.
always do my brothers and sisters in Christ care? Because
Well,
maybe
yeah,
you and I are not actually
yeah.
serving the same God. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe the God that you are talking to is not my God because in the book that I'm reading,
Right,
this
right.
is wrong, and we should
Mm-hmm.
all be on the same page about that. But you seem to not be on the same page about
Right,
that. So,
right.
you know what I mean? Maybe our experiences are different. And as I was listening to you talk, I just remember back when everything was happening with Trayvon Martin.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know, which is disgusting to think about now, even still.
Sure.
I was heavily attending this church. It was, multicultural and
Mm.
cool, and they had a light show and a rock band, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff. And this tragedy had happened. And
Mm.
so I go to church that Sunday, and as the church service is starting, the pastor, who is a white man,
Mm-hmm.
is saying, guys, I don't want anybody to be triggered, but we're going to talk about what's happening in our nation with Trayvon Martin. This is important stuff that we've got to talk about, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, thank you. Please address
Mm-hmm.
this because it
Mm-hmm.
needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is one publicized event that has happened.
Right.
Keyword being, it was publicized. People know
Yeah.
that this happened, right? But we know that this has been happening
Mm.
consistently in our communities. This is not new. And so the pastor gets up and he's all, he's talking and he's kind of talking in circles around the problem, which is that a young black man was senselessly murdered.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I'm waiting. I'm like, he had hyped me up. So I'm waiting, I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
when is he gonna drop the bomb? Not that I even wanted him to speak against anything specifically, but just to say this is wrong.
Right.
And that never happened. And I think for me, like if I could pinpoint sort of a moment where I was just like, okay, I have had enough of this approach within Christianity and within church circles that like I'm not leaving my faith, but I am leaving you. Like if I could pinpoint a moment, I would say that was it. And if I'm to be completely honest, going back to thinking about like, how are Black millennials handling struggle if we're not connected to church and
Yeah.
or some sort of faith-based something. How are we handling this? And I would say that probably the way that I have handled things as I have kind of not been as attached to church as I was previously hasn't been the same.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wouldn't say, and it's hard to say better, worse, because it's complicated. It's not as black and white, but I would say that my approach has changed. And I think that a lot of other people, are dealing with something similar.
Oh yeah, I don't think you're alone. I mean, I think the reality is that when Trayvon Martin was the catalyst for a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
that was when they had their I guess you could say technically it's like their first like real racial encounter that
Right.
that woke
Right.
them up and like not the first rate, but you know what I mean, the first big racial encounter that was very traumatizing for people. For me, it was Rodney King, and Amadou
Sure.
Diallo. So many
Mm-hmm.
years ago. But Trayvon was definitely another one that was like, whoa. That was a real lightning rod, a moment. And I think the reality is that the American church is really diverse
Mm-hmm.
and the Black church is so very diverse. And so there is a sense in which even within the Black church, depending on what kind of Black church you're in,
Right.
like say a middle class, Black church, maybe in the burbs or outskirts, of the city, is probably not inclined either to talk about
That's real.
what's going on either,
Right.
and so because I got saved in the Black church, and so some might not be inclined to do that, and that's sometimes it's because of their social location, meaning not their literal location, but that also might play a part too, but their own social location, their own socioeconomic status, and just being comprised of older Black people that are like, look, we lived through Jim Crow. We are just biding our time and we gonna trust the Lord. Like,
Okay.
and also the revolution does belong to the young. So I'm not trying to say, that your 60-year-old mama or grandparent should be out in the streets. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But,
Right.
the revolution does belong to the young. But I think there is a sense in which they're like, man, we've been here, we've done that. Like, it's y'all's turn. Like, I think, and I think that's different than a white evangelical church where the people voted, for the man in office. Let me say that because I don't know how far I can go on the show.
You can go as far as you
I
want
know
to
what I
go.
can do on Tuesday, but I don't know what I can do here.
You can go as far as you want to go.
But no, really, they elected a dictator, a fascist dictator.
Yes.
And so
it's
that's
terrible.
And that's exactly what they did in 2016. So I put those in different categories, right? Is it wrong? Is it right for the Black church, for certain segments, let me say, of the Black church to not speak out on these things? No. Is it the same as white evangelicals not doing it? No.
No.
Because white evangelicals are oftentimes, their faith is constructed in such a way that it's connected to empire, right? And so it upholds empire. It does the dirty work of empire. And that's why it exists. It exists to hold power and to hoard power and to lord it over others. Whereas the Black church, they just like, look here, we just trying. And I'm not saying
We're
there
just
aren't
trying to get
some.
through.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there aren't some that are about empire and power either. I'm not saying that, but there's a difference between somebody who has gotten over and they just trying to maintain, like, and they are just trying.
Yes. Right. Like you've lived a life of
exactly
struggle in many ways. And it's
and
like,
still
okay,
do.
you know what?
Right.
And you still struggle.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, once, like you said, this is for a young person. You need to head this. I will support you.
Right.
That is not the same as I am voting in this person who hates Black people and women and anyone who is not a white American.
Absolutely.
And listen, okay, I have had to pray, okay,
yeah.
for the Lord
Yep.
to help me through my resentment of white evangelicals. Because once again, like I've been in church my whole life.
Yes.
And one of the first church that I remember going to was a mega church with my family. And then we kind of branched off and went to our other church, which is a kind of like a more community-based, smaller Black church. But I think about those people and I'm like, Jesus, help me, because do you care about people? Like, are you familiar just with like the story of Christ and how much he cared for people and how that care and that love, it came across. It didn't matter who it was. And, it really cast a lot of doubt in me. And as I think, once again, go back to a lot of people who are like me, and there's been a lot of coverage over people leaving church and talking about, Black people are choosing brunch. Young Black people are choosing brunch over going to church. And it's like, yeah, totally get that, because I don't want to, like, the spiritual energy that it takes for me to sit next to a bigot and act like I'm cool with that. And act like I'm, you know what I mean? I'm just like, all right, yeah, woo, let me hug it out. Love your neighbor. And it's like, I love you, but I don't think you love me. And that's so hard. And there is a level of resentment there that I feel, and I think a lot of people fear.
Absolutely. I mean, I do think it's good that you're praying that the Lord will help to lift that. You know what I'm saying? That that bitterness. 'Cause you
Girl,
just
I'm trying.
you don't want to carry that. It don't belong to you. Like,
It sure does not.
and so, it's not your weight to carry. You don't want that's hard to do. So my admonishment or my encouragement, not only to you, but to the listeners who are like, ugh, I'm good on church. My thing is America, there's a lot of church options in America now. And
There are.
So
Yes.
my thing is always like, don't leave the church altogether. Go and find a church where people actually see you as human and love you and your blackness. And where you can strive together, you can walk together, like where you can have community. We were never ever meant to do this faith walk on our own. We just can't do it. It's really hard to do. And you need people sharpening you. You need people to vent to you. You need people to remind you, like, of that God cares. That, like, yesterday, well, and honestly today, I'm still downcast about what happened, the injustice that happened to Breonna Taylor and what happened there in Louisville yesterday with the grand jury, and just how her white neighbor's wall is worth more than her life. And I just absolutely torn apart by that. And I remember just honestly telling Christina and Michelle, like, I am so mad. Like, I was like, I'm so mad. Like, I was like, I don't expect justice from our system. I don't. I was like, I was like, I wasn't even invested in, like, meaning, in hoping, right, in the system that it would come through.
We never thought it was going to go any other way.
No, I never did. But I was still upset, right? And I was like, and I told them, I was like, but I expect God to be God. Like, and God is the God of justice. Like, what is happening? And I was just so mad. Like, I was so mad. And so this morning, we have a prayer line, so that's been my lifeline, by the way.
That is amazing, though.
That's been my lifeline. So we have a prayer line, and Christina prays Habakkuk chapter 1. Like, Habakkuk's complaint to the Lord. Like, like, how long, oh Lord? Like, do you see what's happening? Like, the righteous are prospering. They're thriving. Like, justice is perverted. Like, nothing is going the way of the righteous. Like, don't you see? Don't you care?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, how could I forget about that passage? Like, it was like I never heard it before. Of course I have. It's like I never read it before. Of course I have.
Sometimes a good passage at the right time, though.
Yes. And so I say that to say, like, we need the fellowship of the saints. We really do, because it's hard to make it. And that really helped me. It helped to lift my countenance. Of course, I'm still sad and grieving. We're supposed to grieve and lament when we see wickedness in the land, especially when it's mitigated against our people.
Right.
But yeah, so anyway, my encouragement is to find a church. And now we're online, so
right. So you have lots of options.
You got lots of options, y'all. We only have to drive to church no more, okay? But but find a place where you can be like, oh my goodness, like where they see you, they care for you, they love you, they're caring about the things, they're preaching about the things that salient, and that are pressing. I know my pastor's going to put together a sermon about this, or at least touch on it.
Right.
And the whole sermon doesn't have to be about this. I mean, either way, I'm good either way, but I know my
but
pastor
it needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah, I know that my pastor will acknowledge that. So find somewhere, like, you know what I mean? Find somewhere, because Christ didn't turn his back on the church, right? He didn't. He actually came and died for the church. And so we love Jesus. We love what Jesus loves, and she is imperfect, but the church needs you. It needs the millennials. It needs Gen Z. It needs everybody to come and help to strengthen her and to edify her and sharpen her. You know what I'm saying? And to help to point out the hypocrisies and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you talk about community so much. And once again, back to girlfriends. I think after watching this show again, I'm like, this show is really just all about friendship.
Yeah.
And friendship is, I think when you become an adult, people don't have as high regard for the impact of friendship.
Oh,
because it's almost like, it's not the same. When you're in school, you're a kid. It's like, oh, these are my friends. And it's your tribe that you're kind of creating, and they're very center to your life in addition to, like, your family.
Yep.
But when you become an adult, it seems that it's like, it's about work, and it's about, if you're married, it's about your spouse or your kids or whatever.
Yes.
But that's one of the things I love so much about the show is, like, no, like, actually my friends are my family. This is my community.
Yes.
Which is dope, right?
Yes.
But one thing that I was listening to a sermon of yours that I love that you've given recently, and you said the quote, "Faith is a community project and a family affair." And I was like, wow, like if that doesn't really encompass like the show Girlfriends, but also what I think is the lived experience of lots of Black women is that you don't experience faith alone. You don't live in your faith alone, right? Like this is something that you, like iron sharpens iron, right? Like I'm with my girls, I'm with my people, I'm with my church family, I'm with my friends or whomever. And so I guess, you know, it really, that really struck me when you said that. And I think about that and I wonder also, what would you say for someone who is trying to remain hopeful at a time like this in relation to community, when you might feel like, yo, the community or my government has let me down, my state has let me down, my elected officials have let me down, has God let me down? You know, what would you say to that?
Well, I'm preaching to myself these days. No, you know, honestly, I think what I would say to that person is, or whoever that is bring your honest petitions to the Lord. Honestly, bring how you feel, take it to the Lord. Like God can handle it. Like for real. Like and you'll see that the Holy Spirit will really come in and strengthen you, you know, because that's really where I literally was less than 24 hours ago.
Yeah, it's real.
Like literally less than 24 hours ago, I was like, I just can't even, like, you know, I was like, I can't even cry about this. I'm just so angry. I am just, you know, living, and I'm still going through a roller coaster. We are experiencing as a people, we are experiencing collective trauma. There is, you know, it's absolutely, these are trauma responses, the numbness, the roller coaster of being angry one minute, next minute being numb, to, you know, to being like feeling like a soft rage. I call it soft rage, you know.
That's a really good term.
You know, it's like, you know, we are just feeling the whole spectrum of emotions. I would say primarily probably anger, maybe even some trauma laughter, right? And so seeing
where you're just kind of like,
you're just trying to, you're trying to get over. And so I would tell that person to give that to God, honestly, and tell your friends. Like I had to tell my friends. I was like, y'all, I am mad. Like I just like I'm mad. Like I'm mad at God. Like why we are praying and praying and praying every day, God, we're praying for you to have your justice and let your will be done. And we don't see it yet. Like, you know, we don't see it yet. Doesn't mean it's not happening. Like you don't know what we don't. God is like so. God is so
right,
so
and it feels that way.
Like, you know,
it feels that way because if you just look at the last like 2 weeks, you're like, God, you had, you know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away. God bless her soul. You know, and now
Chadwick.
Oh my God, Chadwick, and you're like, what, God? Why take him? And then, you know, everything happening with filling this empty Supreme Court seat, the upcoming election, now Breonna Taylor. It's like, God.
It's a lot.
Where are you? Where are you in this?
Where are you? And so this is the thing. This is the power of the scriptures, though, is that it gives voice to our soul cries. It really does. If you go through the Psalms, you will see scriptures in there about like Psalm 13. How long, oh Lord? Like, will you cast off forever? Like, you know, like legitimate questions that the psalmist is asking. Lamentations, that book is in there for a reason. You know,
right,
for times
the name says a lot.
Hello, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, Habakkuk. I mean, it's all this. There are words in the scriptures for us when we can't find words, when we can't pray. You know, and though even that is a prayer of petition to the Lord, just reading God's words back to God. This is what you said, God. So trying to locate yourself and anchor yourself, I think, and then also for me, pulling on the faith of old and thinking about really what our ancestors went through, honestly. And not trying to do the oppression Olympics. Because, I mean, I think we are going through some real suffering here. This ain't no... You got people that survived Jim Crow and saying, like, this is just as bad as what I was experiencing back then. Like, so we're not
It's looking a little similar.
Yeah, we're not tripping.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? We're not
Nope.
tripping. This is
No,
like
we're not.
legitimate suffering. Like, but I think we have to pull on like the Sojourner Truths, and we got to pull on the Harriet Tubmans, and Ida B. Wells Barnett, and their Fannie Lou Hamer, John Lewis, Elijah Cummings. We got to pull on that same faith tradition. It's that old time religion that got them over. And that's what's going to get us over now too. And I know that's not like some glamorous answer that people want, but that's it. The truth does not change. It really doesn't change, but we need the support of other people to hold us up, to carry our burdens. We need people to tear off the roof and lower us down to Jesus's feet. Right, for healing.
Okay.
We need that. We need friends like that will intercede for us, that will pray, and you will see it lift, because I do this justice work. So I see all this stuff day in, day out. The only way I can have resilience in this is because of the Spirit. Honestly, and it's because I stay on my knees and I'm praying and I'm looking, because I do not trust the systems of this world. I know that they are corrupt. I know.
And if you don't know now,
well,
you better know.
Now you know.
Like,
I know that I know that we will never, ever, ever get complete justice on this side. If we get it at all. I know that. I know that only God can deliver. But I trust that God really, really, really knows what God knows what he's doing. And I have to hold on to that. And I have to believe that.
Yeah.
Because the saints of old, they believe that. And there's a cloud of witnesses that can testify to that.
Right. Some still alive from that.
Still alive.
From that
Some
time
still alive.
that can have that testimony.
Yeah. So keeping that eternal view in mind, and knowing that Jesus does actually walk with us, that literally he took our sin upon himself and suffered because of us, because of love, he did that. And knowing that he knows what it means to have the state kill you and murder you. And you didn't do a thing, right?
Nothing.
He also knows what it means to be rejected by those who created him, right? That was us now, yelling, crucify him. So he knows both, he knows it intimately. And so that helps. Yeah. That helps to it's the gospel. I can't, it's the gospel that helps to anchor me, really. And friends that'll walk with me.
Yep. You got to have the community. I think you really have to, at this time, like you said, I think it is great to plug into your community, plug into your faith community.
Yes.
Read the word so that you can have that grounding, you can have that understanding.
And read it in community. It's meant to be read in community.
And read it with your community.
It's meant to be read in community. This is the problem, is that we have been so socialized into Western norms, that we individualize our faith. Like, and I'm not saying there's not an individual component, right?
No, and there is.
We're saved unto Christ as individuals, but we're also saved unto a people, right? That would be the church. And God knows who the sheep and the goat are. That's for God to separate, not for us to separate, but to determine who is actually his, meaning is what I mean when I say that. But yeah, so when people say, I'm leaving, I'm kind of doing my own thing, it's me and Jesus, that's so Western. I think sometimes people in trying to decolonize their faith don't understand like how even their decolonization is so deeply Western. And that even that needs to be interrogated, you know what I mean, and re-examined.
I mean, if you're American, it can be really hard to kind of pluck that out.
Oh, yeah.
And I realized, just from having a lot of friends who are not American, that like, man, my approach to some things, and I'm not even talking about big things, I'm just talking about like, oh, my car broke down and I needed to go to the doctor. And so I called a taxi or I called a Lyft or Uber. Where it's like, why didn't you just call your friend? I don't know. It didn't even pop into my mind to do that.
Yep.
So, and I also think, even like African-American people, Black people tend to be more communal in general. But there's still that aspect of like, oh, I don't want to burden anybody, or I need to keep my whatever thing I'm going through on the inside, and to keep that to myself, and all of that. And you're right, that is Western. That is not everyone's approach to spirituality, to faith, and right now, I think we have to lean on each other, no matter if that means a text message in the middle of the night, like, girl, I'm about to. Like I'm having a moment. I'm having a moment.
Yep.
Right. And so anyhow, This conversation has been really great for me. Like, I feel better
Oh,
after having this conversation with you, because like you, I was feeling very like, Lord, I've thought about Trayvon, I've thought about Chadwick, I've thought about Ruth, I've thought about Brianna, obviously a lot in the last 24 hours, and so it could feel really heavy, but I'm so glad that you were here to give us that positive Holy Spirit. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
But I do have one question that is lighter and more fun.
Woohoo!
I am curious, so I like to ask everybody who I interview for the show, which girlfriend do you think you are?
I was thinking about this because I was wondering, I was like, I think she's going to ask me this. Oh, it's hard to choose, honestly. I think, honestly, back in like now I'm in my 30s, but I think back in my 20s, I probably would have said, and when I was watching the show, like, like college age somewhere, I think I would have said I am closer to Toni, is what I would have said back then, because I was so like, I mean, I didn't, I wasn't like a gold digger in that way, but I was very well to do. Like, I had some stuff, I had some money. I was kind of like, corporate America, the whole, and I was living in LA as well.
Oh, yes.
I was living in LA at the time. And I was always about like, oh, what do I have on? What do I do?
Yes. You were about your paper.
I still like to dress, but I was all about the labels. Like, I was more so about the labels, and spending money on bags and sunglasses and all this stuff and driving a fancy car. So I think back then I would have said Toni. Now, honestly, it's hard to choose a character, one of the characters to describe me now. I think in some ways, because I don't think I'm in the same place that the characters are in now, right? And they're frozen in time, right? So they don't have the benefit of evolving, right?
Yeah. And we haven't gotten a Girlfriends movie yet.
That would have been great. Yeah, we haven't gotten a movie. So, but I think because in my 20s, I think I really identified with them because I was a little bit more obsessed with, I want to get married and have kids, and it's still a desire of mine too, but it's not as it doesn't feel as pressing, as it did for me, ironically, in my 20s.
Right.
And so in some ways, it's hard to choose. I don't know. I guess right now, if I had to choose, maybe like Super Saiyan version of Joan and Toni mixed together.
So you would be like a Joni evolved.
Yeah, I'd like to think it would be a super, I hope evolved. I don't know if it's evolved, but yeah, I think a more I don't know how they would be. I don't know how they would be now. So I don't want to make it seem like they wouldn't be evolved. But yeah, I guess I would have to say, because I have to answer the question. So I guess a mix of both, because Toni was like real fly. So was Joan.
Yes.
Joan was real fly, and I still like to dress, real cute and stuff. But yeah, I think obviously, my faith is so central, to who I am too. So that's why it's hard for me to choose. But yeah.
I get that. I feel like one of the different girlfriends like every day. So I get it. Mostly I'm like a Joan usually. Okay. But I don't know, this last week I've been feeling real Maya. Like real.
Yes.
I might just, pop off with somebody at any given moment. But like
Maya,
next week.
Right. You're right. Probably right about now. I'm feeling like Maya. You're right.
I'm feeling very Maya. Okay, that's what I'm saying. So, maybe next week I'll be very Lynn, very peaceful.
Yes.
I hope. So I pray. Oh man. Well, anywho's, tell us where we can find your work and where we can find you on social media.
Oh, yes. You can, well, thank you so much for having me, Rosalind. You can find me on Twitter at Sista, SISTA _theology, and on Instagram at Sista Theology. I'm on Facebook as well. I have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/@Sista Theology. And then of course Truth Table Podcast. I have that, and my website is systematic, SISTAMATIC theology.com. And so you can find all my writings and my lectures, sermons, and articles. I think I said that. So you can find all of those things there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for just bringing your nice, great, positive energy. I needed that, and I'm hoping that a lot of people will be blessed and that their spirits will just be lifted from this conversation. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I'm honored. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you so much for listening, and make sure that you join us next week for our very first boyfriends episode. So I'll be talking about girlfriends, obviously, and some of the other topics that we've already covered on the show, except we'll be getting it from a man's perspective. So it's going to be new, it's going to be fun, and I'm really excited about it. But in the meantime, if you want more Life and Love According to Girlfriends, follow us on social media at Girlfriends Podcast and sign up for our newsletter. Have a great week.